one of the interesting parts about being a Midcap CISO is I'm often sort of like a learning laboratory for the Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 peers that I sometimes interact with, because I can go into a tool space, and if I can't handle it with my small team, it's going to cost them a lot. They have that army of people, but is that really where they want to spend their time either? So I actually spend a lot of time educating my vendors, partners. How do you live in a small to medium business world? Because if they can be efficient enough to deliver to that, they can scale up to Fortune 100s.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative and Google Chrome Enterprise is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the #1 best-selling CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as from other top CISOs and cybersecurity thought leaders. Listen to previous CISO Stories episodes at securityweekly.com/CSP. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Walter Lefmann, Director of Security at Chicago Trading Company.
I've always been a puzzle solver. That's sort of what led to my initial career in physics and all of that. And even before I was a physicist, I was kind of, shall we say, an unofficial security tester. Back in the days when they had the 2600 magazine, and they gave me the first microcomputer in my high school and public school in New York to actually administer and work with. And I just like taking things apart. There were always things taken apart in my room at my parents' house, and computers are just another thing to take apart and figure out how they work. And security is all about that kind of puzzle solving.
I'll bet you were a challenging child.
I absolutely was. I was almost expelled from second grade.
It reminds me. I remember my son, who's also very inquisitive. One day, I went up to his room, and he's got the pencil sharpener on the floor, and he's got like a pen or something. He's trying to get something out of it. He had the cover off of it, and it was still plugged into the wall socket. And I couldn't have leaped over fast enough to rip that out of his hands. But to him, he was just solving another problem.
Exactly. Yep, we do like puzzles. We like solving problems. We like thinking sideways. I've always found that security people, when I did software development too, you have a solution, you write the code. But the harder part is now handling all the error conditions. Like, what can go wrong? What if it's not? What if the input is terrible? What if the output fails? What if the thing times out? That whole cloud of things that go wrong is one of the more fascinating and challenging parts. And that's just fits the whole security mindset too. Great, you have a thing. Well, how can I break it?
Well, I think that's a great skill to have, and something we've always said is people need to be curious in this field. So let's talk today about managing cyber risk in a mid-cap company. So tell us about that. What's your day like?
My day, and the reason why I love mid-cap world, we're big enough to have the enterprise concerns and big enough to have some enterprise grade resources, but we're small enough to be intimate and business focused. So when I start in a day, I always start with, why am I here? And I have updated my mission statement to make it even clearer. The purpose, the mission of information security is to make sure the business and your job is a success. We do that by managing risk. We do that by preventing harm, but we also try to find a way to enable new and exciting things to do that you can do safely, that you get seatbelts and airbags and guardrails so that your car trip can be done at high speed and you get done what you need done safely. So that's very exciting for me. And Midcap is a great scale because you can stay intimately connected to the business. So since we're going to be audio, you can't see that I have the whales, my whale shot. I have a great scuba diving whale shot behind me. That is the background I use on Zoom on all our new hire orientations. And one of the most exciting things I love about the Midcap scale is I get to meet every new hire personally in that orientation. So there are no strangers in the company, and they know me, and we start by building a relationship. And I have the whales on the background instead of some corporate logo, because at the end of it, I discuss what a great career you're going to have here. It's been a great career for me. This is my passion. And now we make that human connection. And those relationships build strong security in the company, because now I'm not a stranger and I'm not the person who comes and tells them what to do.
I can actually relate to what you're saying, because I've been the CISO for some large organizations, but I've also earlier in my career, I was responsible for a division which was, about 1,500 people, and we had 13 offices around the U.S. And one of my favorite things to do is to go to each one of those different offices once a year and do the face-to-face security awareness training. And you got to know all the people, and they got to know you. And when you have that kind of relationship, they're much more likely to come to you and say, here's the security issues that we have.
Yep. And relationships are always a great start. So the orientation is even less about policy and awareness than just like, well, why is security important? We're here to help you get your job done. So call us because we will help you. A lot of times my security career has been in and out of security for a long time. So I started in an operational background in many places, either in Unix systems operations or market data at my current company. So I was a solution provider to the business. And then when I moved or operated in security, I already had the trust that I was there to make the business run. They knew that. They've worked with me before. I gave them solutions. I made business progress for them. And I'm still going to do that even when I'm wearing my security hat. And that's in a mid-cap world, you can really get much more close to the business in many ways.
So you mentioned that you're the sweet spot for a target for cyber criminals, because you have enough money that within the organization that makes it worthwhile, but you also don't have this large army of defenders. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, it definitely has to be very focused and very efficient. The other part of my mission statement is we manage risk, we don't eliminate it, and we have to do it in a cost-effective way. So we really have to understand who's after you. Like the cybersecurity, cybercrime thing is that sweet spot. If a nation state comes after me, I don't have the resources to protect us. There's no question about it. So I don't waste time on that. Keep an eye on it. We'll have to reach out for help if that ever happens. But then also know that cost risk benefit balance very carefully. We have to be narrow in our focus. We have to automate where we can. We have to limit our tool scope because you can only feed so many mouths, right? It takes time to manage any given security tool, become proficient in it, tune it properly, and get it working to the best possible value. And you can only do that with so many tools. And we also have to go out into the market and really choose our partners carefully. They have to be efficient. In fact, one of the interesting parts about being a mid-cap CISO is I'm often sort of like a learning laboratory for the Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 peers that I sometimes interact with, because I can go into a tool space, and if I can't handle it with my small team, it's going to cost them a lot. They have that army of people, but is that really where they want to spend their time either? So I actually spend a lot of time educating my vendors partners. How do you live in a small to medium business world? Because if they can be efficient enough to deliver to that, they can scale up to Fortune 100s. But a lot of them start as elephant hunters in the Fortune 100, and they have a cumbersome, manual, hard to manage solution, and they can't scale down. And eventually, there's only 100 customers in the Fortune 100. You can make your living off that, great. But if you can break that barrier and make an efficient tool that a small to medium business can use, you have tens of thousands of customers. And I always work with them. It doesn't even have to be cheap. My particular industry is finance. So we have money. It doesn't have to be cheap, but it does have to be easy. I can't spend too much headcount on it. And I can't there are some large security vendor partners I've worked with where it literally would take me 3 weeks to go through the renewal proposal to figure out what SKU goes to what thing and what feature does this and what did that cost and how do I license this? Is this by CPU or by core or by user or whatever? If you just give me one simple package, I can get that signed off, move on, spend that time on something more important.
Interesting. And so what about, working with startup organizations? Do you find that that's a good fit, or is that too risky for a smaller organization and you want more established products?
A little bit more than startup. So my favorite thing to do at RSA is to go into the vendor hall and go around the edges. So there are many vendors in the middle with these 4 quad footprints, 2-story edifices. I know them, they know me. We can talk to each other anytime. A complete brand new startup can sometimes be risky because, it takes time to adopt it and then it takes time to get off it if it doesn't work out. And they're often a little niche potentially. But around the edges of RSA, you'll see those companies that have crossed the line to be just mature enough to be able to afford that tiny footprint booth somewhere. So they're solid. They've got their capitalization is pretty good. They've got some customers. They've got some real world experience, and they're delivering, but they haven't exploded. So in fact, I'm probably not quite at that stage, but I've adopted things like Palo Alto way before they were popular and became big public company. QRadar, which we're not on now, but that was a great product to get into early, and a few other things like that. It's a wonderful place because they match us. They're sort of mid-cap like us in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so what sort of tools do you find that is a mid-cap that are like those essential tools that you need to have?
Well, you got to have a decent SIM. You got to have a decent EDR. And it has to work on everything you have. So I've come across some tools that we don't work well on Linux or we don't do this. No, you have to work easily on everything. And the most important thing for any of my tools is they can't be a leaf node in my process. So if they have a lot of data, but they're not sharing it out so my other tools can work with it too, that's just another mouth to feed. So I don't have, network sniffers that you place all over the place and you do, span ports and fiber sniffers and things like that is a total loss for me because every company that says, I can do X, Y, and Z. And I say, how do you get the data? Well, you put these sniffers all over your network. And it's like, that would be the 3rd set of sniffers I have to install. Can't you take the data from somebody else who already has it? Nope, can't fit in my world.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers. How do you get more with doing less? How do you make that happen?
Well, the other interesting thing about midcaps is the security career that goes with it. So I have a small team, 5 people, including me. So we all have to be generalists, and we all have to be extremely hungry and learning and willing to work in anything, in networking side, in the Linux side, in the EDR side, and the firewall side. And you need that generalist. That's a great career thing for them because, again, they're not stuck in a silo. You got that job in a big company, you're going to be operating your firewall. That's what you do. In the mid-cap company, one of my senior analysts is also engineering in our EDR solution and working with the technology teams to develop new solutions for new roaming laptops for our developers and giving a presentation in our technology managers meeting about that solution that he engineered. So he's got a wide swath of responsibility and great growth opportunities. So those are the people you need. Great for them. Incredible career builder. You get to cover a lot of area. Great for us because that's efficient, right? I don't need to hire separate people for each of these tools. But that also goes back to why those tools have to be straightforward and simple. They can't need a lot of manual tuning, manual operation. Has to be easy for someone to operate part-time.
Is it so? Where do you go to get those people in your organization that would be attracted to a mid-cap with larger companies throwing around assumingly bigger salaries, for things like that? How do you navigate that?
Well, for one thing, fortunately, I am fortunate in my industry. It's a finance industry, so nobody's going to beat my salary. That's a big plus. That helps right there.
So note to all of our listeners out there.
Yeah, there you go.
Send Walter your resumes.
Pretty much. You have to find those people. I usually find them at conferences or in my own company. So the current security operations and engineering manager, I stole from my networking team. He used to work with me in network when I was the network manager, and he was very interested in security. So there he is, and now he's the manager of the team. I had a contractor I brought in to just cover as an analyst for somebody, but I saw that in that person, and we've now developed him into a senior analyst. And others, when you're trying to interview, you just have to find the person who has that background. As a hiring manager, in other places especially, a great place I have found to hunt is your help desk. Because a really hungry, ambitious, and smart help desk person has all the skills that you want. They know how to puzzle solve. They know how to communicate. They also know that when they're talking to people on the other side of the phone who bring a problem to them, they don't know what they're talking about. They're going to tell you the wrong things. Sometimes they might even actually lie, but they won't tell you what's really wrong because they don't know either. So you need good communication. You have to understand the business. You learn to understand the business and what's important, which help desk call is important that you really have to escalate and handle. And you learn a whole swath of technologies because, they're going to be a desktop problem, a network problem. You're going to have to figure it out and send it to the right place to solve or solve it yourself. So those people come with that great broad background and they fit perfectly into a mid-cap spot.
There's a lot of skills that a help desk or a customer service person has. I know a totally different scenario. I just got a new grill, and it's a natural gas hookup to the grill, and I swore that the burners were not igniting the gas in the grill, being that user on the end of the line. And only through that discussion coming to find out that somebody had tightened down the hose fitting too much and had used a pipe flange, and I ended up actually choking off the gas flow into the grill. And I could have sworn it was the problem with the grill, but the person was very patient, sent me replacement parts, no problem, sent me pictures, had me send them pictures. But the patience that you have to have with somebody like me on the other end of the phone just shows that you have those skills, and then the follow-up and the communication. I think that's an excellent point, because we usually look to help desk people, but it's also that communication skills and being able to work with that end customer that really comes through here.
And especially, as a security person, you're either very specialized in a big organization and will always have to reach out for help to somebody, your business partners, other tech teams, even more so in a mid-cap. So we have a very great partnership with our DevOps team. We hired very well. They sometimes push us on security, but they clearly know their world better than we ever could, and we can partner well with them. Same for technology infrastructure. And our Windows team, it's like we know enough about Windows, but we have to be able to partner with teams in order to get that leverage. And that's part of the other mid-cap leverage. How do you do more with less? You need your partners. You need, in all the tech teams that are executing, you have to teach them enough about security. They know when to call you, and you can interpret things that they aren't specialists in, but they also are specialists in their field in ways that you will never get so deep in. So they better be your friends and your partners.
How does that work with the board or the senior executives? What's your relationship with them? Do they look at the security stuff and say, "Oh, that's an IT problem," or how has that evolved in your organization?
That's an interesting one. I actually almost always have gotten along better with my executive management than middle management by far, because the problems that we bring to the table to an executive management is this is firm existential risk. They trust us to execute well, but they also realize that what we do is critical, and they can juggle. They have that big picture. A middle manager, they have their task. They got their silo. They have to get this product out. They have to solve this problem. And so they often are harder to partner with, oddly enough. The challenge with executives is making sure that you're speaking the language of business they understand. I am happy, and I always train everyone I ever hire this, know the business, like really know the business. CTC is great, and even a tech firm a trading firm I was on before, that would actually give options trading training to every employee, even the front desk receptionist, just so they knew why the business was there and made money. And it gives you the language. So if I speak to an executive, they're struggling with like, well, this seems expensive. Why can't we take the cheaper option that the other team proposed? And I can talk to them in their language. I can say, it's a low premium for that option, but it will end out of the money. If you pay a higher premium for this option, I guarantee it will end in the money. And that's, if you're a banking person, you say you're taking out a loan, you're going to pay later with high interest if you take this loan. If you buy this loan, it seems expensive up front, but you're going to pay less interest in the long term. Whatever that business language is.
So you're actually doing not just understanding the business, but converting the security talk. I didn't hear you say anything about controls in there.
No, not a thing.
With what you just said, you converted the security lingo into the business lingo.
Exactly. And I try to do that in reverse as well. The interesting thing about the security team tends to often be a lot more tightly coupled to business than some of the tech teams. Because again, like the help desk, we're touching everything and everyone all the time. And sometimes we've brought the reverse translation down to our technology teams, like our networking team, or some of our outside consultants sometimes when they talk about security evaluations. It's like, well, you have a connection between you and this third-party B2B connection. There should be a firewall in there. And my answer is, I will never in a million years put a firewall in my market data circuit. We are fighting for nanoseconds on our response to those pieces of data. I will never put a firewall in there. We have to manage it some other way. And that brings clarity to the conversation from a business point of view, even though best practices would say something different, or a networking person would look at it and say, well, of course I'm going to put a firewall in there.
Yeah, it's fascinating the different businesses we did. I did CISO stories a while back with the person who was responsible for the Johnson Control Space Center with NASA, and he was talking about encrypting the communications to the satellites, and it's like, well, we can't do that, because we just don't have that kind of bandwidth, and they had to find another way, and it's that adapting to what the business needs, which is so critical. Well, Walter, this has been great talking with you. What final advice would you give to emerging CISOs, current CISOs, new CISOs, as they're trying to navigate leading security in a mid-cap organization?
You're going to bring a lot of incredibly specialized technical knowledge that you distill into a risk. And if you can distill that into a risk in a business context and realize that you're there, like my mission statement says, to make sure the business and each person in it is successful, then you will be, even as a frontline tech person, you will be much more successful in your career. And that is the way you would ever come to be a leader in security.
I think that's great advice, and it's obvious to me why you were named this past year's Chicago CISO of the Year for the Midcap organization. So congratulations again on your award.
Thank you. And community. The other thing is community. Go speak with your peers, give back to your peers, share. You will learn and you will grow.
And I know you do that on a regular basis. So thank you very much for your contributions, Walter.
Thank you.
Are you constantly thinking about how to keep your enterprise as secure as possible? Get to know Chrome Enterprise, the browser that will secure your organization without the added expense and complexity of additional browsers. Its simplified management features will free up your team to focus on critical security tasks that can be overlooked because of time and attention it takes to manage other solutions. Don't settle for a browser that compromises your organization. Visit securityweekly.com/Chrome now to start protecting your organization like never before.